Hey everyone, let's get started. Excited for a new class. We're going to start this one with Adam Smith, the father of modern day economics. I think one of the things that he's probably most well known for, is the publication of his book, The Wealth of Nations, in 1776. So, The Wealth of Nations, again, father of economics. Chapter 1 in that book is on the division of labor, which sounds like a very management type of concept. So to show how the things that we're going to study later in this course are really different from how we thought about it for a long time, we're going to talk about division of labor leading to the wealth of nations, and then why kind of that idea has been so ingrained in the way we think, and then to show you how the org behavior concepts have really kind of taken that and led us to a new place. So with Adam Smith, 1776, I'm going to take some liberty in kind of describing this example. I think it'll make it more fun and more interesting. 1776, most people, what do they do for a living? I think most people are probably involved in some type of agriculture, agrarian, farming type of industry, type of work. And so those people live kind of out of the city. Get transportation is a different thing back then, so getting into town, being able to trade and exchange was a little different. So a lot of those people, let's kind of imagine, they did a lot of things that they needed to do to support their family by themselves. And so one of those things that was very important, which he describes in chapter 1, is making pins. If you look and find out when the patent on the zipper was, it was in the mid-1800s. Velcro, what we call Velcro, came about much later. So back in this day, I'm kind of assuming and thinking that pins were a bigger deal, to be able to hold fabric together, all types of fabric, whether it's window coverings or whether it's clothing, whatever it may be. So in this limited year of 365 days, let's imagine one of these people needing to take a day off from everything else that needs to be done for life in that day to concentrate on making pins. Adam Smith described the process as being made of about 18 different steps. So if you can kind of, in my brain, and actually it would be more than that if you think about where the metal came from for the pins, but at our hardware store they have chain and they have rope. If you think about, my mother used to knit, and so that thing of yarn, you have to find the end of the yarn on chain or on a big spool. You have to find the end of the wire, and then you have to draw it out, and then after it's drawn out, you're going to have to somehow cut it off, so clip it, and it's probably going to roll up. Then what you need to do is you need to straighten it. You're going to need to clean it. You're going to need to cut it into smaller pieces, and those are going to need to be cleaned up and maybe filed. You're going to have to get a point on it. It's going to need a head on the end of it so you can push it in without impaling your finger. They didn't have plastic back then, so maybe some type of wood is kind of what I'm imagining. So you have to make little tiny wooden heads for it, put a little hole in it, and you have to glue it on somehow and make a pin. So Adam Smith said in that day, for one person to do it, one person to do something that they don't do on a normal basis, they're doing everything else they need to live on all the other days, they dedicate one day to making pins. Adam Smith said that a single untrained worker could scarcely make one pin in a day, and certainly no more than 20. So imagine taking a whole day off work and you devote all your time to making this thing, which you hadn't thought about in a while, because you have to do all this other stuff. I've got a edger at my house, and that it's got a blade that spins around. You run it next to the curb, cut the grass that kind of spills over. That blade has to be replaced every now and then. To me, it's the biggest pain. I don't do it very often, but it involves 2 wrenches, and I can't remember if it's opposite threaded or normal. It's the biggest pain to be able to change that. Now, if I did it on a regular basis, wouldn't be such a big deal. Kind of those same ideas. With making pins, it just doesn't happen very often. So exactly how did I do it? Where are the tools? Oh, I hadn't seen that. Do I need gloves? Just all the things that a person would have to think about to make these pins that are not in their normal course of business. It would just take a while to get everything put together and remember and be able to actually do it. So Adam Smith, I like to think is kind of a young man, he peeked into what was called a manufactory. Back in kind of the birth and in the heyday of the Industrial Revolution, he sees a factory, and I'm kind of picturing it a building with doors open, and he could go in there and look. And what he saw is that there were professionals in there. He saw that there was a group of, here we'll put 10. He describes about 10 workers working in this manufacturing making these pens. But instead of making everybody doing all the tasks and starting from scratch and going all the way through to the completed end product, he saw everybody doing one or two things. And then they would pass them on to the next people who did one or two things and one or two things. And then they worked together as a team. These were organized people. What he found is these 10 organized workers, they weren't just producing it in numbers that we can count, they were producing it in pounds. He found that these 10 organized workers were producing about 48,000 pens a day as a group, about 4,800 per worker per day. Remember, the untrained worker, we're talking scarcely one, but certainly no more than 20. So altogether, 10 of those could have produced 200 in a day at the absolute max. Here, you've got these people pumping out 4,800 per person per day, or 48,000 as a group every single day. That is a huge gain in productivity. All right, so he has to describe why. So these people, these organized workers, these are the professionals. They're not off making their clothes. They're not off making houses. They're not doing all the other stuff that is needed to survive. They're making pens. So how does this work? How does this make a nation become wealthy? Well, let's first explore the reasons why we have those huge gains in productivity. The first one he called dexterity of the workman. Dexterity of the workman. And in this, I think the easiest way to describe it, if I were better positioned in this room, I would untie my shoe and I would retie it right here while I'm talking. If you remember back, or if you have kids that you've taught how to tie shoes recently, you know that that's kind of an ordeal. They really have to concentrate. This is a new task that they've never done before, and they don't have the dexterity, in their hands that is connecting with their brain to be able to do something. So when you first learn a new task, there's a lot of time concentrating and making sure that you can do it just right. But after you do it over and over and over again, it gets to the point where you don't have to think about it. That's what this one is, dexterity of the workman. The second reason he gives, he calls it no process loss. There's no wasted time moving from one stage to the next, or trying to remember where you put your metal clippers or your gloves or all those other things that you needed. Where are those? I know they're buried under it. It takes me so much time just to find certain things on little home repair projects because I don't know where the stuff was left. When you have a manufacturing, a factory, a workplace where everything is right there, there's no wasted time. So no process loss. You don't have to think about it, you just move, there it is, right there. You pick it up. When I was an undergrad, I worked as a pricer for the University of Florida's warehouse for the bookstore. And there were times where a truck would come in with 810 magic tape, those little green packages, boxes of tape. Each one of those would have to be individually priced. Tens of thousands of stickers would have to be, Post-it notes would come in, and we would have to open them up and price them individually. I loved those, and I would figure out, in a very efficient, kind of weird management kind of way, figure out the best way to sit and how to position the boxes around me and the cutter to be able to open up the box and then to rip things and then the stickers on and then put it all back. And the first couple boxes took a while to figure out the system, but after doing this for hours and hours and days, and maybe even a week, working on some of these projects, there were times where I was talking and laughing and interacting with my coworkers. I'd see a box next to me that was opened, that had been cut up. I had no recollection of actually doing that, and I'd have to open the box and look to make sure I'd done it. That's what comes about with dexterity of the workman and this idea of no process lost. All of my work, everything that I needed was right around me. And then the third one, he called invention of machines. So you do one thing over and over again, you can figure out a way maybe to invent something that can do it. So instead of pulling out one piece of wire at a time, maybe we could have multiple spools and they would all run through some type of clamp. They could draw them out and then it would also clamp and then it would cut them so things aren't springing and disappearing on the floor. And then from there they could move into something else. I automated an Excel spreadsheet this morning. So instead of having to do things manually, I realized that I could automate it through a formula with an if statement. Bam. Okay, that's when you become used to it and understand what's going on, you can imagine ways to invent aids to help you out. So these are the three reasons, the explanations that Adam Smith gives for this humongous gain in productivity. So now the question goes back to, how do nations become wealthy doing this? Now, I also use this example when we do an entrepreneurship class, because this kind of tells you that, here we go, anything that is wanted or needed in a society can be the source of a business. That shouldn't be a big surprise to you. But coming back to this, what if I were a pen maker and on the way home I get a phone call and my wife says, hey, why don't we celebrate tonight? Go get some steak tonight. And so if I'm getting paid in pens, I've got all my pockets full of pens. I go find the guy who's in charge of steaks and he said, hey, all I got is a cow. And I said, all I got is pens. And he said, well, I just traded for some pens last week. I don't need any more pens. And I was like, well, I really don't want a whole cow. I just want some of the cow. Okay. Barter, according to Adam Smith, is not an efficient way to conduct business because you have to find people whose needs and interests line up exactly. So what you do instead is we take the excess that we produce above and beyond what we ever possibly need. You take the excess into a common marketplace, and then through some system, you then turn that into money. You turn it into cash. And so now I can take my cash and I can go to another place and trade with them for their excess that they don't need. And it's a more efficient way of exchanging. So here we go, Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations. In order for a nation to become wealthy, what needs to happen is not everybody needs to do everything that is needed to survive and as a society to survive. But if everybody in a society would pick a couple of things and become really good at it, then you could then take that into the marketplace and you could trade. And so, think about my role as a professor. Here I am, I think about this, I present it, you all then, help contribute to this, and then in the process, now I have money in the marketplace to then trade maybe even with what you do. It's a more efficient way. But also, if you look at the cost of these products, back here, what is the cost of a pen? Even if they made 10, what is a pen going to cost? It's going to cost 1/10 of a worker's day, labor. What is the cost of a pen here? It's 1/4800th of a worker's day. It becomes a lot cheaper, and because everything becomes cheaper by specializing, then when you take it into the marketplace, you can trade at prices and with availability that you've never had before. So again, a wonderful example of economics, Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations. The wealth of nations comes about through division of labor. Division of labor, is going to require an organizing mechanism, a manager of some type. But we learned later that just dividing up the work and getting as much out of people as you can without attending to their needs can create problems. So if you do attend to their needs and maybe back off of efficiency and include the people and tap into some of these organizational behavior concepts, that you can get even better results and not even be so incredibly strict on just efficiency. And that's kind of what Fred Taylor kind of built on these ideas, but also the Hawthorne studies, which kind of gave a kickstart to the behavioral movement of management thinking, kind of took off from those ideas, or behavior ideas, where it's not just about efficiency, but it's about people. And when you pay attention to the people, you can actually get better results. So that's it. That's a good way to get started. This will be a fun class. There's a lot of great concepts from the individual perspective, from the team, from the organization perspective, and then also studying how it all fits into an environment. So that's it. I'm looking forward to it. We'll do more of this later.